Yes, you're shooting into Raypower 100.5 FM this beautiful Tuesday morning, the 17th day in the month of March 2026. Welcome back from the network studio. My name is Dima. It is time for us, as promised, to see the papers, get to look at the stories that are making headlines today, and of course, keep you updated. Just for some selected newspapers, you can also check out more on your own at your spare time. But I'll be starting off this morning with the Nigerian News Direct newspaper, where the big story is on the state visit. Says Nigeria, UK set to sign historic 746 million pounds deal to modernize Apapa Tinkan Port. Now, that story in detail is on page 4 of the Nigerian News Direct. And before I move on to the next story, just to let you know that we are live on YouTube as promised, and it is on Raypower Abuja, in case you just want to watch this live and also share your thoughts and contribution on some of the headlines. You can head on to the YouTube platform now at Raypower Abuja to check that out for yourself. You are the right fit to stabilize Nigeria's economy. President Tinubu hails Taiwo Oyedele. Now, that story is on page 4. NSIB launches probe into Kaduna Abuja collision. Page 15 read from the Nigerian News Direct. Dangote seals $4.2 billion gas deal with China's GCL Group of Power Ethiopian Fertilizer Project. Read that story on page 3. REA Lotus Bank 100 billion naira MOU hits first milestone with 7MW Ebonyi mini grid project. That one is on page 3. Now, Tinubu's reform bolstering global confidence, Nigeria-UK ties, coming from the minister. Well, you can read that story on page 4. And that's about it from the Nigerian News Direct as far as the front page is concerned. Now I'll be checking out the stories from the Nigerian Pilot newspaper, where the big story here says federal government raises alarm over what? Says Nigeria losing health workers to Japa syndrome. That exodus of health workers has placed enormous pressure on nation's healthcare system. Laments that Nigeria currently has about 4 doctors per 10,000 people. Warns that shortage of doctors, nurses, midwives, and others have reached alarming stage. Want to find out details on that story? Check out page 8 of the Nigerian Pilot newspaper today. Now, on page 7, you have passengers injured as Abuja Kaduna train derails. Also on page 7, Nigeria's inflation rate eases to 15.06% in February. And this is coming from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics. And that you can read on page 7, like I said. Now, moving on to other stories to page 6, Tinubu departs for historic UK state visit, first by Nigerian leader in 37 years. Page 6 read there. Courts under lock as Abia judiciary workers begin industrial action. That story is on page 6. 6 health workers infected with Lassa fever in 1 week. And this is coming from NCDC. Read that on page 9. AFCFTA implementation report highlights Nigeria's trade progress. Page 21 read there. Many fear dead as bomb explosion rock Maiduguri. That is on page 5. ADC faction warns David Mark-led group against unauthorized use. That's the last story from the Nigerian Pilot newspaper this morning. And then we'll be checking out the Guardian newspaper. The big story starts with the Middle East crisis. Says international travel squeeze, tickets spike by 100% as airlines cancel flights. That story is on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. NCDC records 109 deaths, 469 cases of Lassa fever in 2026. That is on page 4. And police counter FAAN over arrest of bandits in Akure Airport. The story is on page 5. Presidency kicks as ADC alleges plots to make Tinubu sole presidential candidate. That is on page 6. ISO World Advisory Board plans awards to promote standards and economic progress. Read that on page 5. And inflation eases to 15.06% despite slight rise in food prices. That is on page 15. Zulum condemns Maiduguri explosion, calls for calm and also for vigilance. That you can read on page 2. Now, beneath the nameplate of the Guardian newspaper this morning, Nigerians anticipate improved ties as Tinubu departs for UK. That you can read on page 3. Falana Adegboruwa faults reintroduction of sanitation exercise in Lagos State. Page 5, read there, find out why whatever the reason they have there. Oyedele sworn in as finance minister, vows to drive revenue and fiscal reform. The story is on page 3, and that completes it for the Guardian newspaper this morning. Before I move on to the next paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper, just to remind you that we are live on YouTube, and that is at Raypower Abuja. You want to check out, watch live, also make your contribution there live. You can go to Raypower Abuja on YouTube and get to, follow the proceedings yourself. Now to the Vanguard newspaper. The big story here says, after 6-month break, flood inflation resumes upward climb, or rather food inflation. Okay, I'm going to take that again. After 6-month break, food inflation resumes upward climb, rises 12.12%. And now writers to the story says, driven by hike in prices of beans and in yam flour, among others. Kogi, Benue, Anambra record highest headline and food inflation rates. Katsina, Imo, Ebonyi records the lowest. Read the story on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Unfortunately, here, scores feared dead as multiple explosions rock Maiduguri. Page 26, read there. Now, Nigerian artists rake in 60 billion naira in on Spotify in 2025, according to a report that is on page 9. Talking about the Strait of Hormuz, EU rejects Trump's demand for help. Page 8, read there. Now, Southwest leaders to federal government and to governor says collaborate to tackle insecurity. Page 15, read. I didn't interview Emefiele during probe, EFCC witness says. That story is on page 16. Turaki's PDP to APC says, you are delusional. Says defections won't kill opposition. That is on page 26. Now, above the nameplate of the Vanguard newspaper, you have President Tinubu's historic UK state visit, page 16 there. On issue of hardship, says civil servants demand 154,000 naira minimum wage. Page 8, read. States account for 48% public spending, coming from Bagudu. Page 5 there. Supreme Court affirms AMCON's sale of Lagos Continental Hotel for 22 billion naira. You can read that story on page 8. And that completes the Vanguard newspaper. Going on to check out Al Jazeera Nigeria. Another train derailment as incidents near 200 in 6 years. NRC confirms injuries in Abuja Kaduna train mishap. That is on page 9. Anxiety over decline in federal government revenue may impact FX gains. That one you can read on page 5. And on the state visit, of course, Tinubu departs Abuja for UK. This opens on the front page of Al Jazeera Nigeria, continues on page 9. 6 health workers contract Lassa fever in 1 week, coming from NCDC. Page 4, read there. Lagos CP debunks viral extortion claim against task force. Page 15. And troops arrest gun runners, intercept 1,084 rounds ammunition. This one is on page 9. Panic as fresh explosion rocks Maiduguri. Page 9, read as well there. And our information minister in UK says Tinubu's reform driving global confidence. Opens on the front page of the Al Jazeera Nigeria, continues on page 2. And that's it from Al Jazeera Nigeria. We'll be checking out next the Standard Times newspaper. Big story here says scores killed, injured as bomb explode in Maiduguri. This opens on the front page of the Standard Times, continues on page 2. Olukoyede seeks strong whistleblower legislation in Nigeria. That is on page 3. And on alleged $6 billion Mambila project fraud, Agunloye reduced federal government equity participation without approval, according to the witness. That story you can read on page 4. Police nab 4 suspects, rescue headers in Oyo cattle rustling case. Page 4 read as well. And also on page 4 is on alleged 8.7 billion naira fraud. EFCC witness reveals bank transaction linking Malami's wife and the son. That one, like I said, is on page 4. Nigerian artists generate 60 billion naira from Spotify streams in 2025. That is on page 13 of the Standard Times this morning. Don't forget, we are live on YouTube and it is on Raypower Abuja. If you want to watch live and also contribute to the conversation, do that live on Raypower Abuja on YouTube. On the UK visit, Nigeria showcases $50 billion reserves, custom single widow reform. Page 2. All right. Igbinedion school bullying says police to charge erring students' parents to court, coming from Edo government. All right, that is on page 2. APC confirms zoning for NWC position ahead of national convention. Page 3 read. And now we'll move on to above the nameplate of the Standard Times. Dangote seals $4.2 billion gas deal with China's GCL Group to power its Ethiopian fertilizer mega project. Opens on the front page of the Standard Times, continues on page 13. FAAN security operatives nab 4 suspects near Akure Airport. Page 3 read there. Now, President Tinubu swears in Taiwo Oyedele as Minister of State for Finance, extols his experience and dedication. And that story is on page 13. And that wraps up the front page of the Standard Times. And actually, the much that we can take this morning as time permits. And these are the Nigerian News Direct, the Nigerian Pilot, the Guardian newspaper, Vanguard, Al Jazeera Nigeria, as well as the Standard Times, which we have just taken this moment. It's not uncommon for you to see the fact that, politics, politicking, campaigning, defections, accusations, or, bold or confident statements and counter statements, just filling up the papers this morning. Of course, we are already in that era. We can't take it out of the picture anymore. And we just continue to hope that this will turn out to be a credible and a fair election at the end of the day. If you like, just that is the hope that we are going to have. And that is the hope that I am having. At the end of the day, we will see, the result, an election where everything works out well, where we have a strong opposition party, where we have a strong ruling party, where we have let's just be sure that at the end of the day, we get what is expected of a credible democratic election at the end of the day. This is just what I am hoping for. I'll be starting with some conversations that we have, or some headline stories that we have from the Standard Times, one of which is this issue of the Igbinedion school bullying. I'm just going to start on that note. The Igbinedion school bullying, I don't know if you had watched the video of these young boys beating other young boys, school children, like they were some, I don't know, should I just call it log of wood? Because it was more like beating with all your power, beating with all your energy and all of the hatred or animosity in you, empowering somebody, another person mercilessly. And some people on the streets of the social media says it is what they do in school. It is what young boys do to other. Oh, there are so many groups of them. I couldn't bear to watch that video myself. I just had to struggle to, because you have to get information, but I just had to struggle through that video to see something like that happening in schools. And this has been happening under the nose of, the leaders in the school, the proprietor, the teachers, and all of that, and nothing has happened. That it has gotten to the point where it's almost a national issue, that children are sent to school to study, and they are forming groups in school. And one group is it the group D or D1 or D10 or something? Now, dealing with others in the school. It is so terrible. But for the Edo State government to say that these children, that the police will be charging the students' parents to court. I mean, I know they are teenagers, they are underage, but what would that really tell, or what would that really spell for the parents at last? Are they just going to pay for the sins of their children? Would they not find a way to actually deal or train these children or reorientate them? Because I feel that the mentality they have at this moment isn't one that is healthy for even basic relationship with people around them. Talk more of the nation as at large as it stands. But really, something has got to be done regarding the issue of bullying in school. It's not the first time you've heard something like that. I haven't heard this for the first time, but seeing that particular one was a brand new for me. That was the first time I'm seeing such a video, such beating. One just gave this boy a very heavy knock on the head, and you can tell that this boy may probably have concussion on the head at the end of the day because of the kind of strength and hatred with which they dished out that knock on that young boy's head. Something has got to be done about our education system. So when we are talking at large about the need to reform our schools, we're not just talking about providing infrastructure. We're not just talking about ensuring that we don't have these children leaving the school at intervals because of strike, because of one agitation with the school and the government and all of that, but the need to also, create more system. Back in my own days, we had a guidance and counseling, session and office where you can go to ask questions. I don't know whether that's going on in school right now, but we need to look at things like this and ensure that we get these things properly done in schools so that these children can also be watched. I don't know if there are guardians assigned to most of these children in school. I don't even know what happens there, but something has got to be done because the state of that bullying is not one that one wants to keep experiencing at all. Some of them might even come back and not talk about these things, and they just keep living with it. You can imagine the kind of mind we're breeding at the end of the day when we allow things like this to continue. Really has got to do something about it. Now, it appears that the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria and the Ondo, was it now the Ondo State Police, are now having a little bit of a, issue on the report that we had read earlier regarding the fact that, okay, FAN said, okay, they nabbed terrorists in the airport. Now, the police came out to say, no, that's not true. That's not what happened. Still talking about the fact that we need to always, at every point in time, be certain of our facts, verify our facts before we go out there publicly to say this is the information that we have. That is very important at every point in time. All right, let's move on to other stories coming from other papers this morning. That was Ondo Akure. Yeah, that was in Akure. Okay, so you can see others. The federal government raising alarm about the issue of Japa syndrome. Federal government is raising alarm on the issue of Japa syndrome. To who? Because we have been raising alarm over the issue of Japa syndrome to the federal government. And now the federal government is raising alarm of the issue of Japa syndrome to us. So I don't know where and how maybe we have to have a roundtable at this moment to kind of find a way around it. It has been a steady cry over the issue of our health sector, not just that we don't have infrastructure in the health sector, but the fact that the health personnel are probably not well taken care of to the extent that some of them who are unfortunately very good would rather want to practice outside the shores of this country, no matter what it takes, even if they work longer hours, whatever be the situation, because of the care, because of the attention they seem not to be getting from this side of the country. How would that be if we produce intelligent minds, if we produce people who are dedicated, passionate about their craft, about their profession, but can't get to practice it to make the country proud, but rather go out there to do that because we seem not to be paying serious attention? Good to know that this one is on the table of the federal government now, because according to the Nigerian Pilot newspaper, it says it is the federal government that is raising the alarm, which means there is a need to do something about it. And urgently as well, because we can't continue to have the issue. Okay, the paper reported that there is a ratio of 4 doctors to 10,000 patients. 4 doctors to 10,000 patients. Sometimes you see some doctors when you want to get treatment, when you come to the hospital, the state at which you see the doctor, you wonder, is this one listening to me? Because by the time you see the way the doctor is looking so tired, so worn out, having done marathon, stretch on the duties, you just continue to wonder what happens. This person now might mix the prescription and give me something else. Why? The person is tired. No chance, no space, no rest, and all of that. 4 doctors to 10,000 patients. It might even not be exactly all that it is if we try to check out one after the other. So the issue of the Jackpot syndrome, it has been there. It has been happening. The cry has been on. We've been crying for a very long time. What needs to be done now? Having raised this alarm, having noted this as a thing of worry, as a concern for the nation, what needs to be done? There were promises made. Oh, we'll ensure that that one was for the FCT, where promises were made that we will ensure that we have steady power supply when the resident doctors were always going on strike. One of the promises made, oh, find steady power supply, oh, try to increase your wages, oh, try to increase your salary, this and that, that and this. But at the end of the day, it seemed if you are in the FCT, you will know what the power supply is saying. One of the callers this morning when we were on the talking point had to tell me, yay, NEPA brought light. Like giving that yay is like giving the happiness like a child. And of course, we continue to use the word NEPA because it is something that we have already, tagged synonymous with electricity, even though it is not NEPA. So yes, doing something about the issue, the fact, the matter on this Jackpot syndrome, trying to, at least establish a very strong health system here, and also use that as a means to draw our doctors back is good. Payment should be on time. It should be regular. Across the 3 tiers of the health sector that we have, the primary healthcare, the secondary healthcare, the tertiary, all of them just do something about this thing and continue to, entice them or keep them still with the payment. That is something that we need to do. And while we are still on that, we are seeing civil servants from the Vanguard newspaper here demanding 154,000 naira as their minimum wage. Very good. Very good. But how effective? If that is even implemented, I think the 70,000 naira minimum wage is still a tussle in some states. It's still a tussle in some areas. 154,000 naira, considering the fact that, okay, the economy, the hardship and everything that we are passing through isn't out of the ordinary, but implementation is another thing that needs to be followed through. And I think that now that this agitation is coming up, the appropriate authorities need to sit down and discuss with them to avoid any further strike. We have so destabilized administration across states in this country because of strike over agitations of unmet demands back and forth. It has happened too many times. So when agitations like this come up, I think the appropriate authorities just need to wake up and do the right thing by it on time to curtail any kind of agitation that will disrupt administration any further than it has already happened. But this is where I'll be wrapping it up this morning. Forgive me, on this newspaper review. We'll be going over now to the network studio to bring you the news on the hour. A few more conversation around some of the headline stories and other matters with Tosin there and Otse. And after that, we'll come with the fact file. And after the fact file, political platform will be coming your way at 9:15 here on Raypower 100.5 FM. And it will be aired live on Raypower Abuja on YouTube. Thank you so much for always being here. My name is Dima. Good morning.